It's Wombat Jones here for Ramen Chokehold, and I'm here with a very special guest. In fact, he's here to tell us all about an event that's going down this Saturday night, May 19th at the Mansfield Tavern. I'm here with Nguyen. G'day, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, mate, yourself?
Mate, I'm going fantastic, thank you. Just a few short hours after UFC 224, did you get a glimpse of that?
I only saw highlights, but damn, that front kick
Oh, man, it was like deja vu all over again, wasn't it?
sucks. But like it's a fight that had to happen, and he's retired, hopefully. So see what happens there.
Now, listen, man, we see each other quite a lot, especially recently up in the Queensland shows. And why don't you introduce yourself to all the audience out there? And, I see you usually got a camera in your hand. So what are you actually doing at these shows that I see you at?
Well, I have been in the scene for probably the last couple of years, probably 8-9 years and counting. I just started off training mixed martial arts, and like getting around places and enjoying the sport and all that. Had my first fight against Tim Moore, which is a well-known name. It was a pretty fun fight that lasted a minute before he checked me out. But I then progressed from there to doing photos for. I think my first fight I covered was a Brace War event, and I think I took photos of Damien was one of my first fighters. So I went from there, and then it just kind of progressed with people kind of realizing that I like doing this stuff, and they asked me to do a lot more events, and then it progressed to doing artwork for shows like Nitro, and also obviously Aftershock, which is a show that I help run and organize.
And that's what we're here to talk about today, because this event you've actually been given the caretaker role of, so to speak, and you're now sort of the operations manager for Aftershock. And Aftershock 29 goes down on Saturday night. So, let's get stuck into it and talk about it. And obviously we've got the main event, which is a great main event in my opinion. And you sort of build this up, don't you, mate? Why don't you let us know about what Aftershock is and what sort of an MMA promotion it is?
Aftershock MMA is a entry-level, a grassroots MMA show. So our idea is to get guys kind of having the first fight, getting a feeler out. Like it goes two ways though. So like it could be, hey, I'm having my first fight, I want to make a career of it, but how do I get the experience before getting picked up by other shows, pro shows like Nitro and Eternal. So it's a good starting ground, guys. We kind of try and encourage them having 3 fights, 4 fights, C and B class. So those are different to unified rules where they can't do like elbows on ground and strikes to the ground. We can give a full set of rules, but the idea is there's a clear distinction on what is C, B, and A class. All the other ones are kind of like a journeyman kind of thing where they just want to have fights every now and then, but they're not taking it seriously. They have families, man. Like they don't want to go and get busted up and can't go to work and carry the kids and stuff like that. So that's where Aftershock sits in the pyramid scheme of things. And we get a lot of people who started off here and then go to bigger shows. Recently, Janae Harding, she started on Aftershock and she had her Bellator debut. So that's awesome. Unfortunately, she didn't win, but she put on the show.
But shout out to Janae. We love Janae here at the Chokehold. So
I hope my girlfriend doesn't see this, but love you, Janae. So yeah, that's what Aftershock is, and we've been running for a couple of years now. I've been heavily involved in terms of promoting the event with Ross Cameron. He started the show, and that's his whole intention was to get a grassroots, a amateur scene happening in Queensland. We've dabbled in other places, but Queensland has been the home for Aftershock. And this weekend we returned to the Mansfield Tavern for Aftershock 29 with Ezra and Matt headlining the event.
And let's talk about that main event, because that's actually going to be their professional debut. So it's, you're headlining a card with professional debut with all the other sort of amateur fights leading up to that. So it's a fairly different MMA promotion, and I love what you guys are doing. So, we got Matt versus Ezra, and how do you see that one going down between the two lads?
Oh, man, that's a cracker. I think I'm actually really happy that they decided to debut on our show. Like I said, the goal was to get amateurs through there. They have the debut, maybe have another second fight on there, and then get picked up. Ezra's fought on our show. I think he's had 2 fights on our show, and then he had one in turn also. And he's a hard hitter. Like, he will try and knock you out, and if he doesn't, it's a war. Matt also is another talented fighter from Integrator. He's been around the scene for a while, and he's phenomenal. He's dynamic. He's got a bit of everything: wrestling, striking, grappling, and he himself had several Fight Night honors. And to have the two of them fight against each other is going to be crazy. And they're going to have a massive fan base between the two of them. How I see it kind of unfolding, I don't know, eh? Like, that's the beauty of MMA, is it all looks great on paper, but on the night, it's who's going to show up, who's going to be the better man. And honestly, they're both my favorites, and I can't pick one.
And like you said, like, if they got like 2 big fan bases at the Mansfield Tavern, that's going to be crazy because, the crowd's right on top of the cage, isn't it? Yeah. So can't wait to hear that atmosphere when that goes off. But there's lots more fights on the card, isn't there, mate? Like, we've got in the co-main event, we've got Nick Skidmore, who's just come off his victory over at XFC, which he had quite a long layoff too, didn't he, mate? Yeah. And he had a great performance. He looked fantastic on that card. And now he's co-main eventing and a little bit of juggle. And I seen, you put a post up the other day where, you're like one of those guys with the plates, aren't you? Where you're spinning the pole and trying to keep the plates going.
Nick's a hard person to match up. I mean, any promotions had trouble matching him in terms of, I don't know whether it's just bad luck, but I was supposed to have him a while back, 2-3 years ago. We just couldn't get him a matchup. We had a matchup that fell through several times. Even this one, it was a nightmare. We originally had someone scheduled for him, and it was a great co-main event. I thought it was going to be a phenomenal fight, but fortunately, the fighter broke his hand, and then we had these other names put it forward to. I don't want to say who it was, because I don't want to make him feel bad about the situation. But I think we had 4 changes until we ended up with Sam Joe Toto versus Nick Skimmer, which would have been crazy awesome.
Absolutely fine, because Sam just come off winning the Nitro belt, didn't he?
Yeah, and that's a big step up for Nick. And like that, people were talking about how that's a tough fight for Nick, but they want to see it because that's a cool fight to see happening. And I think for Nick, would have been great to see where he sits in the rankings. But unfortunately, Sam had a injury to his hand also, so he had to pull out on that one. And then I was like, well, I was pretty bummed because, I had a co-main event and main event that was just going to be amazing. And then out of nowhere, I get a message from Ross Pearson, so Central Coast MMA, and he hits me up saying he's got a guy 3-2, Chad Price. And Chad's he's been around the tracks for a while, and he's had a 2-year layoff, and then he was supposed to fight on Brace recently, but that unfortunately got cancelled. So I guess for me, it was good timing, it was kind of fate, I guess, in a way, where Nick gets his fight, Chad gets his fight, and they're the co-main event for Aftershock 29.
And let's sort of speak about that too, because Nick's training, obviously for a fight, and Chad's training for a fight as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's a good idea to take a fight, on 8 or 9 days' notice, does it, mate? But they're more than willing to put their hand up and throw down in this one.
Oh yeah, I think it is always risky when you get a change of opponent, especially for Nick, when you had it's kind of the Khabib situation where you had so many things happen and fight changes and all that. How do you put the mental aspect of it? But that's what guys do as fighters. They have to, they train 3-4 months, 12 weeks out for a fight, and then when this happens, they can either throw it away and it goes down the drain, or they test themselves, and that's what a martial artist is to test what you can do. You've trained for it, and you're gonna have that fight. And for these two, and I guess the perfect situation is that both of them were training for a fight. So no one's at a disadvantage. They're both on fight weight. They're both at the peak training condition, and both of them had the same situation where something has happened and where their fight fell through. So I think for this fight, in this situation, it's all fair ground.
And I think it's going to be a great fight. And not only that, but Central Coast MMA are only just starting to now, put fighters on shows. And that I was down at UFN and they had a few fighters on their show. So it's good to see that those guys are starting to come along. Ross Pearson opened the gym up a couple of years ago, and I know very well because that's actually my local gym. It's about 30, 35 minutes down the road for me. So shout out to Ross and the boys. It'll be good to see them up there.
Yeah.
But so that's going to be a great fight, the co-main event. But, there's other great fights literally all over this card, especially as well. The next card that would be on the fight is Alex Hong versus Emmanuel Camilleri. Now, I know Emmanuel down from KMA in Liverpool, and when I used to go down and shoot down there with Marty Nguyen and all that sort of. So I know these guys pretty well at KMA. They got 3 on the card. But Alex Hong, the last time that I seen him fight, mate, was an absolute fucking war. It was on XFC, but that was actually at light heavyweight, I believe. So I think he's making his middleweight debut, isn't he, mate?
Oh, actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure if he's like.
Don't worry, Uncle Wombat's got you covered, mate. Trust me.
No, Alex is a regular on Aftershock too. He made his debut on our show, and he's had wars, and he can stand and bang and take a punch. I'm excited to see him fight Manuel and under Brian's tutelage. So I think that one's going to be a cracker itself, which is going to be interesting to see how it turns out on Saturday night. And
I mean, you dropped a name there, but let's sort of expand on that. And even though this is primarily sort of like an amateur sort of promotion, some of the names that we're dropping, obviously integrated, there's going to be Adrian Peng there. In KMA for Liverpool, there's going to be Brian Ebersol, and obviously other camps with bigger names. And, all the big names are still at these events, aren't they, mate?
Oh, yeah. I guess I kind of casually drop Brian's name because he's good mate. So I was like, yeah, Brian. But I think it shows you what Aftershock is about. Like these guys, even though the top pedigree fighters that have a wealthy history of fighting UFC and so to speak, and having them come to these shows just shows you these guys have to start somewhere. They can't just go straight to pro or have these crazy fights for, especially in skill set. So them coming to an Aftershock event, even though these guys are amateurs, they support the show in the sense that these guys have got to start here before they get up to blanks. So,
excuse me, mate. Is there any other fights that we should mention on the card that you're really looking forward to?
I think, to be honest, I'm probably looking forward to the heavyweights. Heavyweights are always fun because, man, it's a one-punch knockout for those guys. So we got Loto, I think it's Nene from Nightmare Fight Club, and he's training with Nance. And Nance is also a regular on Aftershock, and those guys can take a punch. They're big boys, 100 kilos plus, and they will throw leather like crazy. And he's taking on Cale Bird from Integrated. So I've done a little poll on Facebook, and it's kind of like a 50-50 rating of who's going to win by knockout. So that one's a crazy fight. It can either go 3 rounds or just in the first 10 seconds. That's the crazy thing about those heavyweights. And we also have Matt Parner, who's a regular, also fighting Nathan Peckett, who's making his Aftershock debut. He's had one amateur fight, and he's had a history of kickboxing fights. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates to the cage with a veteran like Matt Parner. Other than that, on the bottom end of the card, we got a couple young kids. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, this is possibly the fight I might even be looking forward to the most. Is actually your opening bout, if that's what you're talking about.
Oh, I was going to talk about Isaac, but Jack Williams and Dean McDonald. I think
that's who I'm talking about. Yeah.
Those guys are probably going to be going at it pretty hard for those young guys. I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, that's actually in a C class, isn't it? And let me tell you, like the standard. I haven't actually seen Jack, but I do know Dean quite well, and the standard that you're going to see on the first fight of the night, even though it's going to be a C-class event, is going to be absolute on fire. I mean, we're talking about a kid who trains with Martin Nguyen on a very regular basis.
But then you're talking about a kid, Jack Williams, who trains with Integrator, and they have a stable of fighters too on a regular basis.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's kind of like, 2 of Australia's best top gyms and their youngest prospects having their amateur debuts. I mean, that's fucking insane. I can't wait for it, man.
It'll be crazy.
That's the shit in Australian MMA that flies underneath the radar that I love.
Yeah,
I absolutely live for, man.
I think that's like you mentioned that. Like, I think that's important. Like people forget that these shows need like even if you don't know who's fighting, right? You need to come to these shows and support the shows because the show is the breeding ground for everyone. No matter no matter where you're at with your career, right? You had to start somewhere. You had to fight in a dodgy pub or in an amazing stadium, but you had to start on an amateur show, like your first fight. And I think that's integral. Like I treat Aftershock like a professional show in terms of marketing and producing artwork and everything. But I totally feel like the fan base shouldn't be just people coming to see their friend fight. It should be you coming to the fights because you want to see a fight. Like I've seen fighters, I've gone to fighter shows where I just want to watch a fight, because I just want to support the scene, so to speak. And that's what. Sorry for that little kind of tangent.
No, mate, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we're doing here. Spending our time trying to promote this sort of thing because, really, if more people put their bums in seats on the local scene, the better the scene is. You know what I mean? The more people that will end up in the top international sort of promotions, I believe.
But it's not even just the international scene, right? Because I feel like there's shows like I'll just use one example, Eternal. Eternal is one of the top shows in Australia, and the fact that if people don't support these shows, we're not going to have regular pro shows on the top end. And guys are looking overseas because they want to fight on Bellator or One, or of course UFC is another staple they want to get to the top. But we need our own show that is the set standard that people will regularly fight and the fan is following them. Like that you'll fly from Sydney or Adelaide or Perth to come to Queensland to watch an internal show because they're fighting international fighters, but that doesn't happen if you don't buy a ticket to these shows.
I totally agree, man. And I don't think we're that far away.
No, we're close.
You know what I mean? We're still growing. We're still getting there. And hopefully, people will start voting with their feet as well. So, get down and support this. Mate, I can't wait for this weekend. Is there anything else that you wanted to go through before this weekend happens, my man? I know you've been working your ass off for this show. Like you said, you're producing, a lot of images and stuff like that you treat it very professionally. So anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on before we go?
No, man, just come and grab a seat on the night, get a beer, bring some friends and watch some fights. Because like I said, that main event and co-main event are going to be crazy and don't want to miss out on that, eh?
There he is, ladies and gentlemen. There's Nguyen. And you can catch him and me down at Aftershock 29 at the Mansfield Tavern this Saturday night, May 19th. And we'll catch you then. Thanks for spending some time with me, matey.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.